Now that we have a good understanding on the current monetary system, as well as the history that got us to where we are today, let's talk about the future. The future of money and the evolution that we're headed to is digital money. So, very simply, what digital money is any means of payment that can be transacted digitally or virtually. So, the concept of digital money isn't new. Since the 50s and 60s, we've had things like debit and credit cards, which are magnetic strips on the back of a plastic card that would have information stored, and you can take that around and pay with things through an electronic system. Later, we went through different developments with electronic money transfers. Then it went to wire transfers. And then now we have direct payments using these different applications, PayPal and all these other applications. And then the next natural evolution of this phase is cryptocurrencies, which are cryptographically protected ways to transact information and money. So let's talk about distributed ledger technology. The basis of Bitcoin and all blockchain technologies is founded on the premise of distributed ledger technology. What distributed ledger technology is, it's a protocol, which means it's an algorithm or a computer code that enables the secure functioning of a decentralized digital database. Distributed networks eliminate the need for central authority to keep a check against manipulation. So let's talk about that real quick. DLT is a protocol, which is a type of computer program that enables the secure functioning of a decentralized digital database. Decentralized means it's not in one place. So all of the information isn't stored in one central place because we consider that a central point of failure. So if something happens there, the whole system is bust. Digital just means it can be transacted virtually. And a database is somewhere we can store information. So a decentralized digital database is a virtual place where we can store information that's not all kept in one spot. Distributed networks eliminate the need for a central authority to keep a check against manipulation. What that means is the fact that the system is not all in one place eliminates the need for one authority to make decisions to protect, preserve, or make progress to that technology. Most networks today have a central point of authority that has to make decisions, upgrades, updates, and anything else to that network. And their main job is normally network security, which is protecting it from outside attack. Distributed networks rewrite that whole system by taking that central database and splitting it up amongst individuals all around the world that maintain the system. And it uses a software program to protect it against manipulation. Distributed ledger technologies allow for storage of all information in a secure and accurate way using cryptography. And we'll talk about cryptography here in a second. Cryptography is a combination of two words, crypto, which comes from a Greek word that means hidden. In this case, we mean codes, and graphy, which is a field of study. So photography is the field of study of photographs. Cryptography is the field of study of hidden codes. Cryptography, in the official definition, is a method of protecting information and communications through the use of codes, so that only those who are permitted to view the information have access. So if you're not allowed to view the information, if this message wasn't intended for you, you're not able to access that data. One of the earliest forms of cryptography that we know of is something called ciphers, which were cryptographic physical artifacts that ancient Roman Greek generals used to use in order to send information to each other. So down here is something called a sital, which is an ancient tool used to send encrypted messages, and it would have these letters and numbers. You would basically have to find a password, put in the password, and then it would open up and you would have the message. So the reason we included this is to give you a visual representation of what this technology is trying to do. Back in the day, they were taking these pieces of stone, carving them out, and making these elaborate ways to trap information like physical scrolls and messages inside of them. Nowadays, cryptography aims to do the same thing, but digitally using codes. So if there's a message that gets sent to you, you will also need a cryptographic code in order to access that message. And if you don't have that code, the information inside can either be damaged or can just be locked from you. So let's give a brief introduction to blockchain. So we'll talk about blockchains in more detail in later videos, but it's important to have a basic understanding before we move on to the next concepts. Blockchains are a form of digital ledger technologies which store transaction information in blocks that are connected to make a ledger. So this isn't just financial transactions. This is a ledger that's able to store all transaction information in an accurate way. So a blockchain is a digital ledger technology which stores transaction information inside of blocks that are connected together to make something called a ledger. And so a ledger is just a database that tracks financial transactions. And the blocks are just pieces of transactional information that get stored together. And then when they all link up, it creates a chain called the blockchain, which is a digital ledger that contains all of the transaction history. So if we can take a real superficial dive into what a block actually looks like, an individual block has some of these important pieces of information inside. And obviously there's other pieces of information, but we're just going to focus on these most important ones first. Inside of each block contains transaction histories. And the transaction history contains the amount sent and received of that currency. And let's imagine that we're talking about Bitcoin because it is the most important blockchain technology that exists. Inside of each block contains data about the transactions, including the amount sent, the amount received, as well as the recipient's wallet address, which is the unique identification that says that that individual's wallet belongs to them. Along with this transaction history is also the metadata. All of the transactions inside of a Bitcoin block are timestamped, and that timestamp cannot be undone in the future. So all transactions that are added to the Bitcoin block or that are added to a blockchain are final and cannot be edited in the future. This protects against malicious activity or nefarious actors trying to go back and manipulate transactions to make history look different than it actually was. Another key piece of information that's belonging inside every block is something called a unique ID, which is a hash. A hash is the unique identifier, and we can think about it like a fingerprint that a blockchain network can use to identify that individual block, that specific block, and can use that information in order to put it in the sequence of blocks. So just to recap what a blockchain is, and like we said, we'll go through more details about blockchains in the intro to blockchain video, but essentially it's just a form of a digital ledger technology that just stores transaction information in things called blocks. And then those blocks are connected together to make something called a ledger or a blockchain. Each individual block has pieces of information inside of it. Some of this information is basic transaction history. The rest of it is metadata, and then some of it is something called hash, which is the unique identifier for that individual block. And we'll talk about more detail on blocks in later videos. So now let's talk about cryptocurrencies. A cryptocurrency is money that exists digitally or virtually. Cryptos use cryptography to protect the information and typically serve as a medium of exchange or store of value. Now, we've already talked about what a medium of exchange is and what a store of value is. So cryptos, which is short for cryptocurrencies, they use cryptography technology to protect the information so that we can use cryptos as a medium of exchange in a secure way. A cryptocurrency is the native asset of a blockchain network that can be traded on that network. This part might be a bit confusing, but in later videos, it'll make a lot more sense when we start talking about Bitcoin. But I want you guys to just understand that basic phrase, which is a cryptocurrency is the native asset of a blockchain network. And you can use that cryptocurrency in that blockchain network to transact. So the reason we built this video this way is because we want to talk about digital money, which is going to be the future. In order to understand the current state of digital money, we need to understand the technology that underpins all of these new projects. So the basic technology that underpins all these projects is this DLT, the distributed ledger technology, where there's no central database and the maintenance of the network is split amongst different actors that are spread geographically. Then we talked about cryptography, which is how distributed ledger technologies use the encryption in order to protect the information. We talked about blockchains, which is the specific distributed ledger technology that Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies are built on. And then we talked about cryptocurrencies in passing, but we're going to go into more detail about cryptocurrencies in some of the later videos. So we hope this gives you a good understanding about digital money, the history of digital money and how we evolved from debit cards to wire transfers to direct payments, and then now to cryptocurrencies. We talked about the technology that underpins the entire crypto space, which is distributed ledger technology. We talked about blockchain and how it uses cryptography in order to secure the network and to create transaction histories and to make it easier for individuals to transact on a network in order to create digital payments. And we had a brief introduction on cryptocurrencies, which are now the currencies that were built using the blockchain technology in order to transact in the new digital financial world. So there's going to be more information on digital money, Bitcoin, and blockchains in the next few chapters. This was a brief introduction into digital money and all the things that encompass digital money. In the next videos, we'll give a brief introduction to Bitcoin and we'll start talking about blockchains.